So today I'm going to be doing a Christmas Carol book tag, and this tag was created by Lauren Wade, and I saw it over on Kate Howe's channel, and she said anybody that wanted to should do it, and so I am. And let's jump right into the questions. Question 1, A Ghost of Christmas Past, and this is a book that was a childhood favorite. So sticking with the Christmas theme, I'm going to pick A Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I have so many memories from my childhood of my mom reading my older sister and I this book, especially the parts about Christmas and the celebrations they had while they lived in the big woods. And it was such a wonderful, warm memory for me that this book just always makes me feel happy and like Christmas is just around the corner. Question 2 is A Ghost of Christmas Present. What is a recent read that you think will become a favorite? And I'm going to pick Take a Look at the 5 and 10 by Connie Willis. This is actually a novella that came out this year, and it's set at Christmas. So this is about a girl who is trying to help her sort of grandma and a doctor, research assistant to figure out the nature of what they're calling a TFBM, which is a traumatic flashbulb memory, where the memory is just so vivid, it's like you can recall perfectly and like you're there. And this grandmother has really vivid memories from the year that she worked at the Woolsworth when she was young, and it's like it is always happening to her. And I really loved the way Willis explored the nature of memory and the nature of family, and it was just a really enjoyable read. I love Connie Willis, which I made a whole video about her. I'll put it in the cards. And so no one should be surprised that this is something that really resonated with me, and yes, I highly recommend it if you enjoy sort of science fiction, romantic comedy type things. Question 3, The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. And this is, what book are you coming out next year are you like super excited about? I'm ad-libbing these questions a little, but this would be Agatha Christie's Poirot by Mark Aldridge. This appears to be something of a biography of Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie's most famous detective. So I absolutely love Agatha Christie. If you haven't caught on, my channel name is actually a nod to Agatha Christie and her mystery, The Mystery of the Blue Geranium. I adore everything by her, even though Miss Marple is actually my favorite of her detectives. I do love Poirot, and I cannot wait to read this and just get all of the Poirot goodness injected right into my brain. Bah Humbug, a book that everybody else loves and that you can't stand. So this could actually go in a couple of directions. I was going to initially name Wuthering Heights, but I actually want to give that a reread because I haven't read it since I was a teenager. I could definitely say Catcher in the Rye by Salinger because I have read that 5 times and I still don't understand what everybody's raving about. But I think I'm actually going to go with one that was really popular a few years ago, and that is A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray. So I really feel like this is the perfect example of a book at the wrong time, because I think if I had read it when I was younger, I would have loved it. It seemed perfect. It was historical. There was fantasy elements, mystery. It seemed like it would be right up my alley. But for some reason, I just couldn't connect with the writing and the characters. There was just something that wasn't working for me. So, I mean, I guess it isn't I can't stand it. I didn't enjoy it. I actually ended up unhauling all 3 books in the series because I had all 3 books in the series. And I just think it was the wrong time for me to have read that book. I think if I had been younger, I would have loved it. I do still have The Diviners by Libba Bray because I wasn't against her writing or I didn't think it was like bad. I just couldn't connect. But The Diviners sounds really interesting too. And I'm going to give that a shot at some point. Because of my experience with The Great and Terrible Beauty, it hasn't moved up my list, so we'll see when that happens. Bob Cratchit, an old dependable that you always recommend. So there are a couple, the first being Persuasion by Jane Austen. Persuasion is my absolute favorite Jane Austen novels and actually one of my favorite novels of all time. and then the other would be Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. I adore Ellen Montgomery. I've read almost everything she's written. I think I still have like 2 things I haven't read yet that I'm kind of saving because 2 fictions. There's actually a lot of nonfiction journals, and I have some of those that I would like to get to as well. But yes, I would say Persuasion or Ellen Montgomery are great recommendations because they're just beautifully written and they just make you feel good. So if you're looking for something to kind of lift up your spirits, you can't go wrong with either one of those. Question 6, Tiny Tim, an underrated book that you believe deserves more love. I'm going to choose A Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. This is actually a series, and it is the Dark is Rising sequence. There's 6 books, but I'm going to specifically speak about The Dark is Rising, which is book 2 in the series. So this is the typical middle grade good and evil kind of fight book, but with Arthurian influences and just wonderful, wonderful writing and development. You can really tell how much work Cooper did plotting and putting this book together. So this series was originally published, I think, in the early 70s. My mother read it when she was a kid, and then when I was a kid she recommended it to me and I read it, and I recommended it to my nephews and he's read it. And so this is like a family tradition, I guess, to recommend this series and read it. This is perfectly enjoyable series, even though it is older and the writing style is a little different than you would see in more modern books. It's still just, it holds up beautifully as a series. The second book is about Will Stanton, and as he's celebrating his 11th birthday, he finds out that he has a destiny much larger than he ever thought. It's just a lot of fun, and it's set in midwinter. This particular book is set in midwinter, so there's kind of the Christmassy, wintry feel, and it's just great. So if you are looking for kind of a fun middle grade fantasy read, I highly recommend you checking out this series. Question 7. Today, why it's Christmas Day. What book always gets you in the Christmas mood? So this, I'm going to go with Connie Willis again, and that is A Lot Like Christmas, and it's a collection of short stories. I've talked about it before. I just absolutely love it. It's so much fun, and you can like read one story a night leading up to Christmas for like a 12 days of Christmas kind of thing. It's just such a great way, in my opinion, to kind of get into the Christmas mood, and my husband and I are actually reading this as our Christmas tradition this year. We're starting, and it's just a lot of fun, and I recommend it if you like science fiction. Question 8. The Muppet Christmas Carol, and this is, what is your favorite film adaptation of a book? So I'm gonna pick the 2004 BBC North and South miniseries starring Richard Armitage and Daniel Denby-Ashe. This is, of course, an adaptation of Elizabeth Gaskell's masterpiece, and honestly, I love everything about it. I love the almost Pride and Prejudice type nature of the relationship between Margaret and Mr. Thornton. I love the acting. The entire cast was fantastic. The cinematography was so beautiful. There's the scene, if you've seen it, you know the scene I'm talking about, where the cotton is flying through the air but it looks like snow. It's absolutely stunning. I love the way that they kind of contrasted the coloring of the North versus the South, and how one of them is all kind of golden and rosy and the other is of course much more dark and kind of gray, and it kind of mirrors the character. And then the ending and the way that they filmed it was absolutely fantastic. I even loved the adaptational choices they made. I didn't feel like they made any choices unnecessarily. They were doing it for a way to make the story more relatable and appear on screen better, and it was just done fantastically well. And then the scoring, the music on this miniseries is so beautiful. I adore it. It was just so well done, and yes, I loved everything about it. So I would have to pick that as my favorite adaptation. However, there are quite a few. Obviously, The Lord of the Rings, A Muppet Christmas Carol is actually one of my favorite Christmas movies. So there are a lot out there, but this is the one when I think best adaptation immediately springs to my mind. And so I had to highlight it as my favorite. Question 9 is tag some people. Obviously, since I'm just starting out, I don't yet know who all has done this, and I don't have a lot of people yet that I know whether or not they like to do tags. So let's just say if you want to do this tag, I have tagged you, and if you do the tag, leave a comment down below with a link to video, blog post, whatever form it takes. I'd love to see it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to keep up with my content as I post it. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy reading.